Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Inspiration Paradise podcast. Here we are with Quantum Kaley. We're going to talk about today personal development topics, holistic health topics, and spirituality topics. Kaley, please introduce yourself to the world.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. Whenever anybody asks me to introduce myself, my mind almost goes crazy because it's like, all right, which story do I tell? There's so many different versions of ourselves as this avatar that we're playing here in this human realm. So I guess I'll share today what's alive for me right now, what I'm working with in my current life stream is I'm working with this idea of food compulsion and addiction and transforming that through the realm of non-duality, self-pleasure, bringing things back to the body, subconscious reprogramming, kind of bringing all of these different pieces of the puzzle that I've been gathering in my own life and realizing what absolutely doesn't work and what does work really well, and realizing that it was never actually about food at all. It is so much more than that. It's our hunger for something deeper. And wow, I'm covered in chills right now because what I'm birthing right now it's just my passion project, and I'm feeling so excited to launch it. So that's kind of what I'm currently working on. I'm living in Costa Rica, and I kind of hop back and forth between here and Guatemala lately in the spiritual communities. And yeah, just learning every day how to be a better human. For a long time, it was how do I escape this human thing? And now it's like, no, how do I embrace the beauty that is every day of my life? And just wanting to inspire others to feel that. So thank you for having me.
You are very welcome here. And we're going to have a very interesting conversation here. We're going to start off with addiction recovery. And I'd just like to finish off a little thought that I just had there, which is that this human experience really is a beautiful experience. And this whole conversation will be about this experience and a lot about this experience. And one of the things all of us probably experience at some point is addiction, bad habits. For me, I've experienced food addiction. Once I can't remember how many pizzas, but a lot of pizzas in a day.
Once you've added your title, the behavior that you want to add or remove, what we're going to do is we're going to go down into the two boxes below. And these are for defining what is good and bad to us. So for me last year, when my record was, I ate 10 pizzas in a day, okay?
And I didn't feel in control. I didn't feel in control of that. And so what we were saying before is that what I've come to with my work with men and addiction, sexual addiction, is that it's usually about the avoidance of suffering in some way. And I say to these guys who are having an urge, what we call an urge, we've got two options: go down the route of the urge and continue this cycle of sadness and misery, or face the suffering which is there. And when we go through that suffering, it's really good because you go out the other side and you have your own insights. You collect your own insights and you become a new person. Have you experienced anything like that, Kaley?
Yes. So I think, like you said, we all have struggled with addiction, whether it's intense or more subtle. It doesn't matter. We've all had some kind of addiction in our life. And I actually did a podcast on this recently called Alchemizing Addiction. And what I was talking about is that, no matter what substance or what experience or person or thing that we're addicted to in the physical, no matter what it is, it comes down to this root of us being addicted to compulsive thinking and addicted to, a lack mentality, or addicted to the stories that our pain body and our ego are feeding us, because the pain body feeds on suffering and feeds on fear. And I've definitely been there myself with food. And actually, when you talk about sexual addiction, I've seen the last 3 partners that I've had go through the experience of starting to work with their sexual energy and healing that, and then working with non-ejaculation, taking their power back. And from a woman's perspective, it is the most attractive thing I've ever seen. And it is so healing. It is so healing. Yeah, it's incredible. It's like the holy grail for men. Like, I feel that is really becoming a man, in my opinion, is like moving from boyhood into manhood, because you no longer need a woman to satisfy that. And yeah, I guess bringing it back to just addiction in general, of course, it's going to look a little different for each kind of substance or thing that people are addicted to. But at the root of that, I really believe that it's this craving, this desire for spirit, for our connection with spirit. And we're living in a society where we've been so conditioned to live from our neck up, from our, just in our heads. And that's where compulsion happens. And when we start to come into the body, when we start to heal the body and feel the bliss and the pleasure and the joy from living in this vessel, we get to self-source our pleasure from the earth, from ourselves. And we stop craving these things as much because there's not that like burning desire to be filled by something outside of ourselves. And yeah, it sounds great, but it does take patience. It is a journey. It's not like we wake up overnight and everything's fixed, but we're also not a problem to be fixed, right? That's another big understanding.
And it's like, if you take your car into a garage to get fixed, you don't turn up there next day, just, is it fixed? It takes a week. It takes a week or two.
Exactly. So, yeah. Reprogramming.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of oh, go ahead.
I'd just like to say, like, I can cut this at any point. So any sort of awkward pauses or any time we have to think,
Perfect.
I just cut it.
Sounds good. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say that one of the things that comes up for me that I've been incorporating in the 12-week journey that I'm creating is this idea of consumerism versus creatorship or creativity. And we're living in a society that's very obviously consumer based. We're taught to want to be like taking everything in and filling this perceived void within ourselves. And on the other side of that, when we stop consuming and we go inwards, we start to activate our sexual energy, our creativity that floods into our system and allows us to feel that connection with spirit. So the void that we were perceiving is no longer there. So we don't need this constant consuming in the external anymore. It's really like the answer to just about everything, I feel.
Yeah.
Just the journey of that.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about how the world would be with just less suffering, a lot less suffering. And I think this knowledge here, this entire clip that could be 10 minutes, that all this could really save the world if we had this knowledge. Everybody had this knowledge. This was common knowledge.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Entirely different world.
Yes, I think about that all the time. And bringing it in some way to a younger generation who's ready to receive maybe part of the message, maybe not the full thing, but learning how we can integrate this within, like, maybe not school systems, but maybe creating new schools or creating workshops for the families who are wanting their kids to know different alternative messages. And we are the generation to make that change for sure.
It's the second millennium. There's got to be some kind of meaning to that. Come on.
Yeah.
And by the way, when we talk about schools, I'm pretty certain that I'm going to do homeschooling, because I look at public school and I think I'm not too sure. So I think I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm going to do. And my children are going to be gifts to the world, creative gifts.
Yes.
And we talk about NoFap, which is sexual addiction recovery for men, called NoFap. And we talk about that, and just a little insight about that. I think that semen retention, if a man retains his seed, for some reason, this logically works out for me. I think that the child that is born from a man like that must be a genius. There must be some kind of difference. There must be some kind of difference there. There has to be.
Sure. That feels true.
It feels true to me.
It feels true to me too. Yeah. I don't know. It blows my mind how rapidly I've seen men shift when they get into these practices. And to me, it's one of the most beautiful experiences to witness, of just a man like reclaiming this power that many of them, I don't even think, realized that they were giving away as much as they were. Yeah. And to be able to talk to men about that at a younger age, I think about this all the time with women as well, like talking to that preteen age, letting them understand more about their bodies rather than just like throwing condoms at them, being like, don't get pregnant, because if you do, you'll die. But that's basically the feeling I got in sex ed. So Yeah, if these things
Yeah.
were spoken about at an earlier age, it would change everything, because it's our sense of power, it's our sovereignty in our body, it's how we focus our mind, it's our creativity, it's everything.
And then we go on to this sort of like, see, I get little thoughts that comes in. It's kind of a conspiratorial thought, which is like, maybe they want us to be down, maybe they want us in energy down. Ugh. Maybe it's true, but whatever. This is a different generation. We are in control. We know the knowledge. We have the knowledge to, even if we're in a prison cell, I could be happy because I have some certain knowledge. I have knowledge. We're going to go on to some deeper stuff, but you can't hurt me. I can't be hurt.
Yeah.
You can hurt David. You can't hurt me.
Right.
Oh.
Right.
Interesting.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So I thought I'd put this little snippet in here because this is quite a deep statement. You can't hurt me, but you can try to hurt David, and it still won't work. Because what is David other than a complex web of beliefs and thoughts? You might say, well, it's this body here, and the mind. But in my own experience, the one they call David, my experience is that I am that which is aware of the body and the mind. So I am up here looking at the mind and the body. So, and part of the mind and body is suffering. Suffering is an objective experience which we are aware of. So yeah, we've covered this since the first podcast episode. Go over there. I think it's called Does consciousness arise in the brain? Is consciousness created by the brain? That's a really awesome episode. And then we go on to Spirituality 101 with Tarun Pradhan. Amazing conversations, if I do say so myself. They're amazing. I love them. Please go check them out and leave your thoughts down below. And we did a lot of conversation, me and Tarun. Really good stuff. But yeah, so I'd just like to also say that regarding the ego, which is this web of beliefs and thoughts about my life story and all this, I still use it. I still use it in the world. I enjoy living in the world, and it's a tool. So I still use it. So, but while aware that it's just mind-made, this ego. In the same way that we can use money while knowing that it's literally just beliefs, like, that make it worth anything. What's so great about paper or coins or, and also I can engage in the belief of ownership. Like, I own this phone. I can use that belief, but I know that I don't own this phone. And this, in my experience, gives me a very light, peaceful experience of living in the world. So, but yeah, let's move on to the podcast. Let's go.
So what I'd like to end this with is, it's the avoidance of suffering, I'd say, is the main thing. Avoidance of suffering, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's loads of different ways to do it as well.
Yes, absolutely.
A lot of business as well is made off of a lot of business, a lot of money, billions are made for helping people to numb their emotions. Numb it with food.
Yes.
Numb it with whatever.
Yeah, they create us as the problem and then feed us a million different solutions. And then our identity, who we believe ourselves to be, gets so wrapped up in this cycle of, like, for example, with food, binging and then restricting. And it's this constant back and forth. And we wonder why we never actually can get to this place that society is telling us is you know, this end goal, this body, this image, this happiness that's attached to it. And yet our ego has created our entire identity around this addiction. And so even when we might lose weight for a minute, the ego will find a way to keep fueling itself through our pain to bring us back into that cycle, because the ego just wants to survive. That's literally its only job, is to keep us safe and alive. And even if we're fat and overweight or hating ourselves, it's skinny, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The ego's alive, and so it's happy. Our pain body's alive, and so it's happy. It's feeding off of our suffering. Even if we have momentary satisfaction, and then we associate it with, oh, I lost weight, it must be because of that. But no, we're still, even if we lose weight, even if we diet and it works for a minute, if we haven't fixed our mindset, and if we still believe ourselves to be all these thoughts and emotions and all these things, we're just going to keep pulling ourselves back into the same hamster wheel. So it's really addressing our sense of self at the root of all of it.
Yes, definitely. And well, we've gotten very deep there. And you know, I'd say like I'd say that one of the things I like this phrase, conditional happiness. Whenever I see that my happiness is conditional, I know that, oh, okay, I'm back in the hamster wheel. You know, oh
yes, brilliant.
I'll be happy. You know, I'll be happy when this happens. Blah, blah, blah. This happens, so I'm not happy. Nah, I'm good.
Do you have a way of checking in with yourself with that? Like, I always wonder if other people have like some way of checking in with themselves, of like how to know when that's happening, because it can happen kind of undercover, right? Like the ego can become very clever in the way it pulls us back into that.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I just recognize a feeling of discomfort, a feeling of dissatisfaction, and and that's my cue. I suppose I've made that a cue, and yeah, that's really good. That's quite a good insight, really. When that should be your cue. When you feel a negative emotion, everybody, that's your cue to think, what I have a conditional happiness. Do I need this to be happy? Have I ever been happy without pornography? Okay, then I don't need pornography to be happy. Have I ever been happy without food? Then yeah, brilliant. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then you're off.
Yes, exactly. It's just creating that space. Like, it's the awareness, first of all, of when we feel something in the body, because for a lot of people, that's totally new. Like, I used to be completely numb. Like, everything below my head was pretty much just numb to emotion, to anything. I was living in completely another reality in my own little wonderland. And to come back into the body, we talk about it in a way where it's so beautiful and pleasurable, and it can be, but there's also so much of, you know, impatience and feeling like frustrated with ourselves, because why am I not feeling anything? Because suddenly we're aware and we're like, wait, I'm not even feeling anything. That's okay. That's a step. And then maybe you notice some tension and you're like, okay, let me get curious about that. What's there? Oh, that feels like dissatisfaction. Okay, let me question that.
Wow.
And that's really where the magic happens, is just the questioning, like you said.
Yeah. And by the way, things like what you did on Instagram, which I shared on the Inspiration Paradise Instagram account, which is getting really slowing things down, and just taking a chill pill, taking a second to relax. These times are really good for, you know, getting in touch with ourselves. What's going on? And men, of course, we have this like thing. It's like, oh, don't get in touch with yourself. Nah, it's all right. It's all right to do it. Okay. Otherwise, you become. It was Bruce Lee who said that the bamboo stick is strong because it's, you know, it bends. You know, an oak tree is kind of vulnerable in that way, but it's thick, so metaphor doesn't really work. But,
yes.
So
that's a great analogy.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Bruce Lee.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
So, let's move on now to law of attraction. Oh man, law of attraction. So this kind of ties in. This comes after addiction recovery, because it's just like, now we're talking about the mind, and we're talking about beliefs and how beliefs really change our reality. And oh man, once you've gone through an addiction, you realize how your beliefs really shape what you're doing, and you know, and how they really affect your life, and how they actually can be changed. habitual how habitual beliefs can actually be changed, which is unbelievable. Because beliefs, if we're a robot, then beliefs are our software. And so if you change the software to a what's that robot which cleans your house? It like goes around the house. Roomba. Sounds like a Pokemon. Roomba. Yeah, if you change the software of a Roomba to the software of some killer robot, then that Roomba will try and kill you. So basically, if you adopt the beliefs of a rich person, you're making money. If you and it's like that. And so I've seen that myself. I used to believe that money was very hard to make. Money's easy to make. Actually.
Yeah.
But So what beliefs have you had in the past that have made you sad? And what beliefs you've had?
I love this entire topic because it was, it's so intertwined with just the way my mind works, and pretty much what I've done in my business has always centered around subconscious reprogramming, understanding the way our ego works with our subconscious. Because if anybody's been exposed to Joe Dispenza's work, his book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, was kind of my first segue into this material right around the same time I learned about law of attraction. And I feel that you kind of need to understand both of these, because law of attraction is wonderful to hear, what we're thinking, we're creating, what we're feeling and thinking, we're creating. And yet a lot of times what it doesn't touch on is that covers our subconscious as well. So we're creating based on our wounds and our traumas and what we think about and what our pain body is giving us. And so, yes, it's beautiful to dive directly into law of attraction when we wake up. A lot of people want to do that, but I feel that it's almost more beneficial to me. This is from a kind of a hindsight perspective, but when I started getting into non-duality, I realized that all beliefs are attached to one belief, that I am just this person, this body, and this mind.
Wow.
And I see it as if this is the belief, I'm a person. I'm this limited sense of this focal point of self. And every single belief I have about the way the world works, who I am, my limitations, are all attached to this one misconception that I'm just this. So before, when I worked with law of attraction and subconscious reprogramming, I was trying to help my clients program one belief at a time, which is really challenging, right? It can take a while to, sometimes it's quick, but other times those things are very deeply ingrained. And so I was trying to get through one belief at a time. And I realized that after a couple of years that, oh, wait, if I just target this one belief and show that this is actually false, that I'm not actually just this finite self, then every single limitation attached to that one belief begins to fade. And I had that epiphany probably about a year ago. And so I just spent all my time proving to myself that I can't possibly be just this body and this mind. Not that I'm not this, because I am, but I'm also everything else. So how can I show my mind that I'm not just this? And once I started doing that, I realized that my entire belief system started to restructure itself and my limitations started to fade naturally. So rather than going into we can still do that. We can still work with one belief at a time. And I do that sometimes if it's feeling sticky, but I tend to come back to, like we were talking about Rupert Spira, and directly experiencing myself beyond the body and the mind, because that generally will do a lot more for me than trying to give myself affirmations or to try and prove to myself that I have a wealth mindset, whatever. It's like, well, just go become everything and then you're going to feel abundant.
Yes, very much so. I like that. I love that idea, that this thing, because it's like once you shake once you address this one core belief, it provides a little bit of flexibility, like we were saying. It provides the flexibility to all the other beliefs, And so it's like,
exactly.
It's like imagine there's a tree, and then it's just a metaphor is coming. So like a tree, and then there's no wind, right? And there's a tree, it has lots of leaves, and it's been like this static state for a long time. Maybe it rustles a little bit. Wow. Okay. So and maybe a little bit of wind comes around often, but yeah, not much. What if you? Yeah, I hope everyone's following along. Please, if I've lost you, rewind it. Okay, so yeah, and if I
They're
came
dense
along,
topics.
yeah, or if I came along and I shook the tree trunk, so all the leaves are like the leaves, and they are set how they are, and they're all it's all very systematic. If I shake a little bit, and then it's like, okay, I understand why that belief's there, and I understand why this belief's there, and then it all straight comes back to the trunk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a really great analogy, because it's not necessarily that, you know, we speak about this in a way that's kind of linear, like, oh, you just go target this one belief that I'm not the body mind, and then everything's great. And I don't want to give that impression that this is like a one and done type thing, because everything on this path is so spiral. It's like we uncover a little bit each time we come around, and that's the same analogy. Is like we might uncover a little bit, we might realize in a meditation, okay, I'm definitely beyond, what I am is beyond this mind and this body. And maybe our beliefs begin to shift, and then the ego wants to go, oh, I did it, because the ego is so linear based. It wants everything to be a to-do list. It wants to check it off the to-do list and say, okay, I did that, what's next? And for me, this has been a big challenge, is checking with myself again and again to be like, don't claim that you're done with something. Don't claim that, oh, I did that, because that's just ego, right? So I accomplished this, I conquered this. No, it could come back. I don't know.
This is why the gurus, they're so humble. They're so humble.
Yes. Yeah.
They're so humble. Rupert Spira, as I was saying, he was just a man. He's just a man walking down the street. I went to I'll tell the audience that I went to a meeting with him in London, and afterwards it was about 10 p.m. and basically I was with my mother, right, and we were walking along, and he was just walking, he's just walking, and he's just this solitary man, this unseemly figure, and it's just like this beautiful, everything that he's given me, you, seemingly, obviously me, you, but he's given us this understanding, which has relieved us of the tension that comes with the being myself, being this dude who, oh, I have fear of death, and all my fears are coming, this fear of death. We can talk about death, it's not on the list, but I mean, wow.
Yes.
It's gonna be a crazy conversation. Oh my days. Yeah.
I hope to meet him one day. That is on my bucket list. I would love to be able to sit down and just have tea with Rupert Spira. That would be, if I could have dinner or something with one person, dead or alive, I think I would choose him. I really do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully this podcast, if this podcast rockets up, everybody like the video, comment. Let's get Rupert on the podcast.
Oh, I would be on that as well. I was thinking the same thing recently. I was like, I wonder if I reached out to him, if he would say yes. That would be incredible.
We'll see this at some point, and I'd just like to say, Rupert, that you're very welcome to come on. We'll have a very great conversation. Great conversation, unlike any other before. Okay, so let's consult the list. We've talked about law of attraction. So, but how does law of attraction actually? How does it actually work? So how does if I start thinking positive? Now, interestingly, like when someone forces it, this is what we were saying. It's like when we force it, it feels weird. It feels not right. But when we address this real core belief of who am I, this core thing, it's just like, okay, now I can get down into the programming. Now I can get down into the computer code, and I can reprogram the robots and reprogram it for success. I wasn't programmed for success. Not many of us were, because that's not really what school does, and most of us are in public school. But yeah, one thing I did want to note at the end though is when we do address this, when we are shaking the tree, it's important not to go crazy. Right? You can. Is if you're understanding these things, it's like understanding who am I, questioning this belief. I mean, you could, I don't know, there's deep territory, there's crazy territory. You can,
there is,
you can you can look at an insane person who believes that they're a coffee table, and say, oh, I'm just like you, really.
Yeah.
I just believe I'm easy, you know.
Yep. Yeah. These topics, they can, on the surface, they can seem pretty simple, but when you really start to truly desire truth and explore these things within yourself, they can take you to a lot of edges that can feel mentally very scary. I have a long history of mental health in my family, and the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of like ancestral clearing in that realm, which is just a complete, like, mind-boggling experience to be taken to what I feel is like the edge of insanity again and again and again.
Whoa.
And just having to like surrender as much as I can. I feel like there's probably still more, but to feel like, okay, at this point I could possibly lose all sense of reality.
Wow.
And that's terrifying. It's something I actually want to start talking about more, because I feel a lot of people that are in the spiritual awakening process do find that they feel like they could lose their mind, because it's challenging everything that we thought was true about the world. And that can feel very jarring at times if we go into it too quickly, or sometimes it's never actually too quickly, right? We're getting served exactly what we can handle, but it can feel lonely and it can feel challenging. So yeah, it's a good point to mention that.
Yeah, that's a
good to have
serious warning.
support.
Yeah, it's a serious warning. And if you have any questions, in the people in the comments, about this, then reach out to me. I'm sure you can reach out to Kaley too. Reach out to other people, and reach out, say, hey, I'm feeling a bit crazy right now, or whatever. Yeah. I just feel like, what message us. And I'd like to say also that, I see these comments in non-duality groups on Facebook and things like this. And it's just like, these comments are crazy. Like, when you read them, it's just like, I am this, I am not this, blah, 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 blah. And they're going around in circles, like, really crazy. And I've been there though, I've been there. But
yeah, it takes us in many directions. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Warning has been set. Okay.
Do you want me to touch on law of attraction? Because I know I didn't go too deeply into that, and I had one more thing I could share about that for anybody who might be interested in diving a little deeper into it.
Please do, yeah.
Okay. So something that I found that works really well with law of attraction is, if anybody listens to Abraham Hicks, she was a big part of like the very beginning of my journey, and she talks a lot about the path of least resistance. And with law of attraction, we think of it as this thing that we sit down to do, like, oh, I have this manifestation practice. But actually, there is no pause button on manifestation. We're always manifesting. We're always constantly creating our reality. We might have more intentional time of doing that versus being on autopilot and creating our pain or our suffering, but we're always creating. So in order to create what we really want to see in our reality with the least resistance, and meaning like for it to show up more quickly, I find that if you're going to practice this as like sitting down to do something and visualizing it and getting into that feeling of it, right? Because it's the thoughts that we're thinking combined with the feeling in our body of how it would feel to see that manifest. So kind of these two frequencies, the thought realm and the emotional body coming into coherence. We want to feel what we're actually thinking about. And if we want that to happen and come about and manifest in our reality with the least resistance, we don't want to be attached. We don't want to need the outcome. And so I find that coming into a space of what I call divine neutrality, which to me is like the energy of the divine mother. Like if you come into your heart and you really get beyond just being the mind and the body, and you really open up your heart and you have patience with yourself and you really breathe into this space. And sometimes that takes a while, right? It's not always like, oh, I just drop into it and I'm in my heart. We're reprogramming so much collectively, individually, of what it feels like to be in our heart and to stay in our hearts. But when we can get to that place of feeling love for everything around us, feeling love for our entire life experience, feeling gratitude for even our suffering, just kind of that space of being with what is, like not needing it to be something else, just this deep appreciation of like, wow, I am, and what a gift is that. And when we're in that space, in absence of needing an outcome or in absence of needing to control our reality, we can manifest a soul desire so much more easily. So then we can bring in that desire. And first, I recommend people asking themselves, why is it that I want to manifest this? Because if it's coming just from your ego of thinking like, I want this car because it's going to make me have power or success, or, you know, it's going to make people think better about me. That's fine. We all have our ego desires, but those things are not going to have as much fuel with law of attraction, with seeing them manifest, as if you have a soul desire. And the desire is more for the feeling that something's going to give us versus the thing itself. The thing is just a symbol. So the car, the house, the relationship, these are all symbols of a feeling that we're actually after. So if we can bring that feeling into our hearts, and also know that the universe can show up with this feeling in so many different ways. It might not come in a relationship. It might come in you manifesting a vacation somewhere to a place you never thought of going. And you get there and, you know, breadcrumb after breadcrumb, synchronicities happen, and you're all of a sudden aligned with some other reality. These things can come in so many different ways. So I encourage people, if you want to work with law of attraction, to work with it from the eyes of a child, to approach it with curiosity and non-attachment. Just like, wow, I wonder what's going to show up today. I wonder what magic the universe wants to show me. I'm just going to think about this and feel the feeling that I want. And I'm going to let it be up to the universe how it wants to deliver that to me. So that's, to me, kind of the golden equation that's worked for me the best, is not thinking so much about the thing. Sometimes you use it a little bit to get into the feeling, but then just being open, just being like, wow, I wonder how that's going to show up. That would be my 2 cents on that.
That sounds fun. That sounds like a real fun sort of, yeah. Okay. Definitely try that out. Let us know how that goes in the comments. Try it out.
Yeah.
A week later.
Yes.
Okay.
I encourage using your body too, like dancing with it, bringing it into form some way, or drawing or creating art with it. If it's just in the mind, it's not as strong, or self-pleasure, like whatever you can do to ground the experience and send it out through a really joyful experience like dance. That's one of my favorite ways to manifest. And it usually happens very quickly.
Amazing. I mean, I'll tell everybody this, before I have a nice workout, right? I stick on some music and we get dancing. We get the dancing shoes on. And it's the first song is, he's the greatest dancer. That's the first song that comes on. There's a reason for that. And my neighbors know it. Only my neighbors know. All right.
I love it.
And speaking of, well, the next thing is confidence. So, and what are we talking about here? We got one end, we got confidence. On the other end, we got sort of social anxiety, fear. And I suppose we can sort of start off with, like, what's the first? I said before, like the first fear is fear of death. So if we go into who am I, then confidence is quite easy to gain. What are your initial thoughts on confidence at the moment?
Oh, this is such a good topic. I love that you're asking this. Yeah. This is actually when I used to be a coach, I worked a lot with people on this topic, because it seems like this is kind of at the root of most people's life challenges in a lot of ways. So the ego can make us feel very insecure, or that it's not safe to be me. And there's a lot of dialogue in the self-development community and even the spiritual community that paints confidence and self-love as these things that we have to create or build. And I want to remind all of us that actually these things are already our innate factory settings. It's who we naturally are. And we learn otherwise. We learn insecurity. We learn to doubt ourselves. We learn to worry. And that just covers up what's already there, which is our natural confident self. So first of all, I have struggled so much with self-esteem, with confidence, with social anxiety is still one that plagues me often. I'm really energetically sensitive. And when I'm in spaces with people, I feel like I can feel everything in their mind and their emotions. It's like hitting my nervous system from every angle. So as I come more into my body, it's like, holy shit, this is a lot of feedback I'm getting. I don't know what to do with this. I don't even know how to think right now. So that's been a huge journey for me, is breathing and staying in the body when I feel that. And wow, I could go on so many tangents with social anxiety, but I'll bring it back to what you shared about death and confidence, because I do feel that these are linked. So like I said, we cover up confidence. We all have confidence. We are all confident beings. To me, confidence is, let's call it spirit or God's perfume. It is like the fragrance that emanates out of us when we're just in alignment with presence, when we're not listening to our pain body and our subconscious and the stories and the narratives and all the things from our past. When that quiets, or when we don't give attention to that, then confidence naturally is exuded from us. So how do we begin to unlearn what we learned about ourselves that was actually incorrect is really where confidence can start to stabilize in us. And this is definitely a journey. It's not necessarily something overnight. Of course, you meet those people who go through like some kind of ceremony or healing where it does make a big impact. But for most of us, the human journey is slow, and it's learning how to be patient and learning how to unlearn these things. So I do think that facing the fear of death, even though that might seem at first like, how is that related to confidence? But confidence, when we learn these things that make us worry and doubt and feel limited, those are all fears. And every single fear that we learn is at its root, or the root of all fear is the fear of death. So rather than, again, targeting all of these different separate beliefs of fear, we can just target the one fear of death. And when we do that, all these other fears start to fade with it. They might not go away, but they start to fade, because a lot of times we're not looking at the fear of death. It's just that underlying background noise. So I find that when I've worked with people who they go into this, and I always took my clients through meditations and hypnosis to go into these spaces and face it. Like I made this one hypnosis for a group where it was like this video game, and you went into this video game and you were this player and you had to face all these different types of death. So I made it kind of playful, because sometimes we're so serious about it, and just like reminding people like, hey, that's actually kind of what's happening, is we are kind of in this video game.
Wow.
And death is really just this passing to a different level. And when we can see that, and like you said, going into what's causing us suffering is avoiding this fear of death. So when we can turn to whatever we're avoiding in our life and look at it and face it straight on, it begins to lose its power over us. Things in the shadows, when we look at them and when we say like, okay, like I surrender, what do you have to show me? That's where the true magic happens. And to me, that's like a great first step if people are struggling with confidence. Rather than trying to fix something, just start looking at the fear of death, truly, or other big fears that you have, and starting to prove them incorrect. So if you have a fear of, I don't know, what's a common fear that people struggle with? Like fear of being poor, going directly into it. Like, all right, worst case scenario, what would happen if I did become poor? Let me dive into that. Let me feel it.
Yeah, I love this. I love doing the whole why thing. Why you hate that? Why are you scared of that? And why are you scared of that? And then at that point you go, why are you scared of, what is death? Well, nothing forever. That's what they believe death is. Nothing forever. Why are you scared of that then? To be fair, I think, but then I have had an insight where it's just like, what if someone said eternal suffering? Then, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if I can then say, what would you say if someone said eternal suffering? I'm not sure if I could say like, okay, why don't you want that? Because I can understand.
I think I would ask them to define suffering and to understand what suffering is first. Because I think that suffering itself is like not looking at things. I feel it's just not seeing correctly. And so if the suffering exists, that we're just kind of lost in that like Maya, right? The illusion that we're somehow separate from something else. So the idea of eternal suffering is terrifying, of course. But if we actually question what actually is that, then I feel like there's like that alone would probably be alchemy for somebody who would be afraid of death, because it's just understanding like you're trying to avoid avoidance, because eternal suffering is avoidance. So just turning towards that and being like, what are you avoiding? Can you lean into that? Can you look at that? But yeah, that would be an interesting, because I think that is what a lot of people think, is that they've been sold this idea of hell, of eternal damnation. And
I think like another thing with this is like, imagine if we detached the identity from the thing that was suffering, then there would just be suffering. And also, this is what I've said as well. It gets quite a good reaction sometimes in some circumstances when they do it, when they use it. It's like when you're suffering, if you are aware of the suffering, then the suffering is here, and then you're over here. So you're
Yes.
completely, and I like to say this as well, you're peacefully watching suffering.
Yes,
And it's just like,
exactly.
you know, and then you can't,
Yeah.
yeah, how could you be unhappy after that?
Yeah, it's a process. I feel like over time, like we can, read or hear these things on a podcast or a book or whatever, and then over time it feels like they slowly become more and more embodied in our experience. So maybe the first step, I actually just wrote about this the other night. It's like sometimes even after being on this journey for years, we find ourselves suffering, right? Like it happens, we're human. And then on the other side of it, we're like, how did I fall into that? I know I'm the witness of that. How did I allow myself to be in that space for so long? But it's a journey where over time, more and more, we find ourselves being able to reside as peace, watching the suffering, or you're feeling the pain, but you're not suffering. And I really like to bring that to people, because I used to think, oh, if I'm feeling pain, that means that I must be suffering. But actually, you can feel all of your emotions while still being peaceful. It's a paradox, but we can feel completely heartbroken, and also we can feel so okay and know that we are beyond it.
It can be such a beautiful emotion, I think,
Yeah.
I'm sure you'd agree. Like, just they're all different colors on the paint, on the canvas.
Yes, exactly.
Brown is a great color. All different colors.
Yeah, saying thank you for everything.
What I'd like to do right now is take a little break. I'd just like to take a little break. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut it here. Let's take a little break.
Sounds good.
I had been doing it for like 2 years, and there's some great episodes on there. You have to go back. You have to go back to the catalog.
Oh, definitely have to go back. Yeah.
I put my heart into editing those good stuff.
Oh,
Okay.
as a fellow podcaster, I know how much of a joy that is. So I'll definitely check them out.
Please do, yes.